Welcome and happy Saturday, everybody. MLB Live Before Lock strategy show. It's all just kind of bundled together here for the next hour. I'm Eytan. More importantly, that's Chris. Yes, deep in the NASCAR streets, but also in the MLB streets today for you, as we're going to make you some money. You didn't even know that yet. That's why hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel across the board, our Odd Shopper channel as well. We'll tell you about everything going on here. This is a gigantic 11-game slate that we have to kind of bounce around with. So we do have some time, if you will, to kind of exhale and maybe even go off the rails. What's up, man? Show one for you and me, and I'm excited, brother.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Eytan. We had a good time before the show, learning about each other, talking some crap. So should be a good one today. Pretty mediocre pitching slate, so lots of good bats on this one. Looking forward to breaking it down, and should be a good first show.
Yeah, and both of our teams in action here. Cleveland hosting Detroit, and Philadelphia still on the road in Miami, and you and I were able to share. Although I have to say, and this is not as far as a shot by any means, it's just to kind of understand that we're still not at the level of misery as the Browns fans without that Super Bowl. So at least the Eagles had something in 2017, but you're right. We were able to share stories of misery, at least rooting for just disappointment, mostly year in and year out on the gridiron, man.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the only exciting thing I've ever seen in Cleveland is when LeBron gave us the championship. Outside of that, it's just been pure disappointment for the most part.
Well, yeah, that's the thing too, right? So as much as I may look, all right, lean on the Eagles, you had LeBron come back. Right. It goes down as one of the, and I think once he retires, it will be appreciated more so because he's still active and people are talking about the Lakers and Russ and all the other nonsense and shit that surrounds it right now. But when LeBron retires, I think the defining sports moment is returning to Cleveland and winning a championship there. And of course, the nature in which they did that. So as much as I have Nick Foles and that Bud Light statue here, you've got LeBron coming home.
Right, and we'll take that. I mean, it's just the one bright spot we have. I'm right around from the Akron area, so it's the only thing we had to look forward to.
Look at that, Ritz. We celebrate playoff wins here in the land. Yeah, can't hate that by any means, by any means. All right, bro, so let's look at this today, Chris, as we have kind of a juicy slate, including game one of the doubleheader with the Mets and the Cubs. So overall, is there anything that maybe jumped out at you from, you mentioned a pitching slate here, what you can attack, or even if there's a game, not to get deep into it, but just knowing that we have a bunch of games to look at, was there something that caught your eye, maybe more big picture before we kind of dive into it?
I think the big picture here is trying to decide what you're going to do with Coors Field because it's really hot there. I think it's around 90 degrees. There's no real wind, so the ball should definitely be jumping. The thing is, though, they're going to carry massive ownership. And on these Coors slate, it's always a question of, do you want to go overweight on the field to Coors, even though it's drawing a ton of ownership, or are you just going to go completely under and try to gain some massive leverage there? I mean, we're talking about a really bad baseball team in Pittsburgh here. And while they do have a high implied run total today, go up against a really bad pitcher in Urena, it's still the Pittsburgh Pirates. They still have to make contact first. And they had a really rough time last night trying to get it going. So I think that's kind of the big picture today, is trying to battle with what you want to do with Coors Field.
Awesome, man. And by the way, as Tyler let us know in a Slack here, Soto turning down that $440 million 15-year deal, looking for a trade. So I don't know if there's anybody you can talk to over there in Cleveland. I'm going to try and pick up the phone and hit Dombrowski or somebody, man. But my goodness, if that's the case, not going to impact us today on the slate by any means, but maybe we can dream. And that's really what it is for both of us, I think, just dreaming. So,
I mean, Cleveland hasn't spent money since basically Jose Ramirez. That's just about it.
See, so you have the track record. I have Bryce, but then everything, and JT, but I think they've capped. See, it's like you haven't spent money and we have a cap, even though there isn't really a cap. So I don't know what's worse. They're both bad. Let's jump to Minnesota, man. This is about an hour or so, just under an hour, I should say, away from lock here with these earlier games. So we'll look at the Twins, White Sox, and if it's just kind of some leverage, some area of leverage with the stack and kind of moving into the pitching matchup with that. Minnesota, at least, if you were just starting there with the Twins, some decent, at least if you look at that half point of positive leverage. So if you were to attack or even have that as a main stack, there might be an area to go against Lynn, who isn't catching a ton of ownership on the slate.
Yeah, I mean, both these guys, this pitching matchup is just a battle of mediocrity, in my opinion. Lance Lynn, 4.2 xFIP, Dylan Bundy, 4.2 xFIP. Both have K rates around 18 to 20%. Both don't really walk too many guys. Lance Lynn usually does throw quite a bit of pitches. We do have a smaller sample size with him this year, but he's definitely been wildly inconsistent. So if you want to go with the twin stack today, I have no problem with that. They currently have an implied run total close to 5, and I don't mind that at all. I mean, you have one of the best players in baseball, Byron Buxton, Max Kepler, a guy I love using versus right-handed pitching. Polanco's great, obviously. Correa, Luis Arraez is a high contact guy. So I think the Twins don't look too bad. And like you said, not drawing in a ton of ownership today. And obviously Coors is going to keep everybody in check outside of that game. So I definitely think they're interesting. Dylan Bundy is a guy that will allow quite a bit of power. Does have some similar numbers to Lance Lynn this year, but the White Sox team total coming in a little bit lower, but you still have solid bats like Tim Anderson, Yoan Moncada, Gavin Sheets, who's got some decent pop versus righties as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned Bundy, and both of these guys on the DK slate, 75, 73, Lynn Bundy respectively. So you're looking at saving some money clearly as a P2, unless you want to go, load up on cheaper guys and start spending on the bats, which is clearly a strategy available. I don't know if that's something that we're building or you're building with personally, but point being, at least with these two guys, you could even stretch it. Like, I don't know where you are with a guy like Ranger Suarez, or even if you were going to go to someone like Lodolo, who's that low 8K range. I don't know how much you're truly saving, even Stroman, right, in that higher range. I don't know how much you're saving overall by getting to either one of these guys.
Yeah, I don't really see the need to want to do that. I mean, personally, because if you are going to go with Coors Field today, Pittsburgh is basically free, and there's some other nice cheap bats on this slate to get to, and we're going to talk about some other pitchers here. But even if you do spend up with Verlander today, there's a couple 5K pitchers that are drawing in some ownership that aren't terrible plays today, so you can kind of even that out instead of going straight mid-range. So a couple approaches, and we'll talk about it. But as far as Lance Lynn, Dylan Bundy goes, not two guys I really want to get too much of at all today, really. Now,
are you targeting them? I mean, how much are you going to turn around? Because we talked about where Minnesota was, and White Sox in a similar spot to that 0.5, 0.7 positive leverage. So you're pretty much right there, even to the field. This may be just countering, as you mentioned. Coors is always going to be in the backdrop, and we see that as a reflection right now with our projected ownership of 29% combined people getting to Colorado and Pittsburgh. So that's going to definitely reflect a lower amount of ownership. But at the same time, I don't know how much this game, Chris, is flying under the radar to where maybe there is a couple of opportunities to even substack these two squads.
Yeah, looking at it from a stacking perspective, looking at the top stacks tool, Minnesota's coming in at some very low single-digit ownership, currently below 3%. And I did some pre-builds here right before we got into the show. I think the Twins are popping up around, let me see, for the 5-mans, close to around 4 to 6% of the time. So while it doesn't seem like much, it's a pretty large early slate, and that's still around double the field, if not a little bit over that. So, I mean, while it's not going to be an insane amount of exposure to me, it's going to be enough to get leverage.
All right. Is there anything else here on this game that is worth a pop?
I don't think so. I mean, outside of
just making sure. I don't want to kick a dead horse with 10 other games to get to. Right. So by all means.
Let's move on.
All right. Fair enough. All right. So we'll head to St. Louis. Reds Cardinals here. And this would be a little more interesting, I think, from a build standpoint. Mentioned Lodolo, you've got him, Michaelis, there. So these are going to be in that mid to high range, really like average of 82, 87 respectively. That's the pricing that you're going to get to. And we have these guys. Alex has these guys projected to do some things today. So while there may be an expectation to get to St. Louis, maybe even to a lesser extent what we've seen with Cincinnati from a stack standpoint, let's start with the pitchers, Chris.
Yeah. So Lodolo is a guy that I like quite a bit in tournaments. I was looking at the top pitchers tool this morning, and he currently, I believe, has the highest leverage on the entire slate. And when I was looking at pricing even before all the numbers came out really last night, I was like, Lodolo's kind of in an interesting spot here. Yes, I know St. Louis is going to throw in a ton of righties, obviously, at him, but his numbers so far this season versus right-handed bats have not been that bad. It's a small sample size for Lodolo, but a 29.6% K rate, a 3 xFIP, and I believe there's only one lefty in the lineup for St. Louis today. But I know they typically do have some pretty good splits versus left-handed pitching, but Lodolo's a guy that's shown some strikeout upside so far. We know he's got upside, and not a lot of people are going to him under 5% ownership. So I think he's one of the better tournament targets, and I don't mind getting low double-digit ownership to him.
All right. Now, yeah, I mean, especially when you have that amount of leverage by all means. The other side of that would be you're still gaining some positive leverage from Michaelis despite paying up a little bit more. Still, though, at least projected to be similar. I mean, 13.6 to 13%. So it's a 0.6%. I don't want to discount that as nothing by any means, but I'm saying that's the difference between where Alex has them projected in our top 2% top pitchers tool. So with that said, you're losing a significant amount of leverage compared to Lodolo, but it's not like you're losing leverage to the field.
Right. The only problem I have with Michaelis is that he just doesn't, I don't think he has as much strikeout upside, which is what I'm kind of hunting for in tournaments. He's a great real life pitcher. I mean, no question about that. 3.81 xFIP, sub 20% K. Doesn't really walk too many guys, doesn't give up much power in the Reds offense. While they have been pretty good at times this year, I'm not overly concerned about them. Still a lower implied run total against Michaelis, currently sitting around 3.7, 3.8. I do think he's got a decent chance to win. I mean, the Cardinals do have a near 5 implied run total today, but I think he's going to land around that 4 to 5 strikeout range. Meanwhile, Lodolo, he could be in the upper 5.5 to 6.5% range as far as a projection standpoint.
All right, let's look at the stacks there. By the way, Guitar Man 247 with the shout. And just in case anybody wants to accuse him of being Chris's burner, you could see the comment below to me. So this is definitely somebody else outside of, I kid. We love Guitar Man popping in. Chris should do more MLB shows. No, he does NASCAR, but no doubt he knows all sports. Absolutely. So always nice to see you expanding, my friend, and dominating here in the MLB streets.
Of course. Yeah, looking forward to it. Hopefully we can do some more in the future. Yep. It's been fun so far. We're only 2 games in.
Yeah. See, look at that. This is easy. Today is easy, man. But between me and Tyler, this should not be difficult for you by all means. You just show up and have fun. And if you're not having fun, it's probably a combination of something me or Tyler's doing. And yeah, I don't know why I'm throwing Tyler under the bus here, but that's fine. He can deal with it. He's from Texas. He was talking about bearing this Midwest cold like it was nothing. All right, so let's go to the stack side here. And this is interesting, too, because there's the real life DFS, I guess, meeting here between Michaelis being that good pitcher, but not having that strong K rate. Is that something? And look, St. Louis has a pretty strong run projection of 5. So looks like you can take advantage of that here from a stack standpoint.
Yeah, and the Cardinals really aren't that hard to get to. I mean, outside of Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado being close to 5K, it's not like they're close to the 6K range. They're in the upper 4s. So while I do like Lodolo in tournaments, there's a reason he's a tournament play because I could see it going either way. So I want to be overweight on him in tournaments. I still want to get a little bit of a taste of the Cardinals here. You have Tommy Edmond projected to lead off. I don't think we have a confirmed order yet from the Cardinals, but obviously he's fine versus lefties. Carlson, all high contact guys. And then Goldschmidt and Arenado have murdered left-handed pitching for years and years now. Pujols, obviously, pretty much dust these days, but he's still got some pop versus lefties there. Tyler O'Neill pop versus lefties. So 1 through 6 looks pretty good to me. After that, we start to drop off quite a bit, but I do think they're pretty intriguing with a decently high run total and not that expensive to get to.
Okay. Now, is there anything beyond that from, I mean, I guess St. Louis, when you start to talk about how easy they are to get to, they make for a bunch of options if you're leading or substacking them. Cincinnati, though, I guess is a little bit more interesting to see how you approach that, if it's more top or if you are just looking to maybe sub. I mean, look, they've got that 4 run projection, so it's not like they're at the bottom of this list expected to do nothing.
Yeah, so Cincy is in a weird spot for me because they're not getting much leverage in the top stacks total, 0.6%. I mean, projected for very low single-digit ownership, and their optimal percentage is right there with it. So I'm not really seeing me getting to much of Cincy here because I think Michaelis is, like I said, not a great DFS pitcher, but for real life purposes, I never got my way to stack against Michaelis because I can see him stifling them for 1 to 2 runs for 5 to 6 innings. Then once we get to the bullpen, outside of maybe some Joey Votto versus a righty or Brandon Drury, who's showing some pop this year, I don't really want to get too much of the Reds.
All right, let's look at this game 1 here of the Mets and the Cubs game. All right, doubleheader. We know the rain out from last night. And again, a reminder, if you're hanging with us, hit that thumbs up button, please. A lot of love for Chris. Somebody else just Quinn M. Chris is a huge reason I've cashed in NASCAR the past 2 weeks in a row. Look at that. I had to hit you early before 30 seconds before the music started. I had to hit you with something real quick just because I didn't want it to turn into like a 5-minute conversation of me abusing the work relationship that we have.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I'm here for any and all questions.
Okay. Just out there, if anybody had a question about New Hampshire as well, then you do have Chris here. I can't promise that it's unless it's a super chat. Ooh, all right, maybe that. Any super chat NASCAR questions you have for New Hampshire, we're going to get to, by all means. All right, Mets Cubs game one here. Let's not bury the lead, though, by all means, because we talked about the highest leverage pitcher on the board in Lodolo. How about Stroman, who comes in just below him? And there is a ton of positive leverage if, in fact, you do like him game one against the Mets.
Yeah, Stroman's a guy for like real life purposes. He's kind of similar to Michaelis, where pretty good for real life purposes. 3.39 xFIP this year, 22.5% K rate, low walk rate, a little bit of pop this year, but nothing that's really too substantial. The problem is he's facing the Mets, and they just don't really strike out too much. The one thing he's got going for him in this game is going to be the wind blowing in, I believe around 12 miles per hour, which, if you're in Wrigley, it's obviously a big deal to look at, and it is going to suppress the runs typically over significant sample size. So I think Stroman, I don't mind it just because of the leverage. I think his ownership's currently coming in, not even a percentage. So we'll see if that changes when it updates. But if you want to be overweight on Stroman, it does not take much to do it. But for DFS purposes, I personally don't get there too often. I think I'd rather take a shot on a guy like Lodolo with some more strikeout upside. But Stroman's there if you're just trying to get a few percentages on a pitcher for leverage today, but not excited about it.
Yeah, and I'm just curious, how much are you even getting to him in those pre-show builds that you were looking at?
So he currently is at 2%, which like it's not much, but currently that's about double the field right now.
Yeah. No, that's why I asked, because you could say double the field and you look at 2%, but at the same time, I think that's a great answer in the sense of it explains how you can be overweight to a low-owned pitcher and take advantage of leverage, insane leverage in this case compared to the field, but your lineups aren't bogged down with Marcus Stroman in order to do that. You're not overweight to 15 to 18 to 25% of the field.
Yeah, I think a lot of people confuse that sometimes, because when you say you like someone in tournaments, you want to get overweight, that does not mean I'm going to come out here and make Marcus Stroman a 40% owned guy in my lineups. Like, it only takes 3 to 5% to get that kind of leverage. You don't have to take a huge stance. Like, it's different for each pitcher. Like, if you want to take a stance on Verlander today, that means you got to play like 70 to 80%. Stroman, we're talking just like 5%.
Okay. Let's look. So on the other side, though, you've got Walker, and I don't know how much you're looking at him as well. If Stroman and that K rate is a concern, is it the same here with Walker, or does the Cubs lineup maybe do anything to mitigate that?
Yeah, it's mostly the Cubs lineup for me because I can get to some time on Walker today. Like we said earlier, for guys like Michaelis and Stroman, fine real life pitcher for DFS purposes. I don't tend to get to these kind of guys much, but the Cubs lineup is definitely what I'm not too scared of. There's some strikeouts to be had. There's some guys with power, but at the same time, Taijuan Walker is a guy that's pretty much allowing virtually no power so far this year. 50% ground ball rate, under 100 ISO, 3.67 xFIP. A pretty mediocre 20% K rate, but we're talking about a mid 3.5 implied run total against Taijuan Walker today. So if you're just looking for a pitcher that can go 5+ innings, pick up a win, obviously the Mets offense is good enough to be able to do that versus Stroman. I think he's in a solid spot. And I mean, if this was a normal slate where we had some other good pitching options, I probably wouldn't have any interest in Walker. But outside of Verlander and Max Fried, there's not much to like.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah. It's going to see, especially how this plays out. You mentioned Verlander, a couple of other guys. So I don't want to harp on this too much. On the other side of it, though, it's just really, you mentioned the Cubs lineup as an opportunity combined with the rest of the pitchers on this slate to get to Walker. So from a stack standpoint, knowing that the Cubs are probably going to be less favored by you, especially with a run total under 4, I don't know how much you're getting to them, but even the Mets don't necessarily jump off the page outside of maybe the matchup, and even Stroman, it could be manageable here.
Right. And the thing is, the wind is blowing in Wrigley today, which is going to hurt offense overall. So this is honestly just a game where I'm getting to a little bit of Stroman. I'm getting to some Taijuan Walker, pretty close to even to the field. I maybe slightly overweight. I'm recrunching some lineups, so we'll have to see where it lands. But as far as the offenses go, maybe outside of some Pete Alonso one-off or Frankie Lindor and Brandon Nimmo, I'm just not really getting to this game.
Yeah. All right. That's all I need to hear. We can move on, keep it moving to Toronto. A little more offense expected, at least from the Jays. And after this, we're going to tell you guys about what's happening here, because we still have some really cool offers, including this 50% off package for you. But let's look at Toronto. We'll keep this moving, and by all means, hit as much as we possibly can. Any chat, any super chat specific, definitely not necessary, but always appreciated. Run total's a little higher for the Jays, and that's just Daniel Lynch in town. And again, a low K percentage, for the Royals. On the flip side, you do have Max Castillo, who at the very least is projected to have his numbers, at least a pretty decent outing, especially where we have Alex, but that cost may be a little bit to work with, even though he's dealing with a little negative leverage.
Yeah, I think Castillo's kind of interesting to talk about on this slate, because if you're just looking at it from a Vegas standpoint, the Royals have one of the lowest implied run totals on the slate, 3.3. He's got a very good chance to win. I'd be very surprised if the Blue Jays aren't one of the best stacks on the slate today versus Daniel Lynch. Obviously not a pitcher you ever really shy away from, typically a guy you want to stack against. And obviously the Blue Jays have tons of righty power to combat the lefty Daniel Lynch here. But Castillo, if you're looking at his pitch count, it's obviously going to be the main concern here. Yep. But the last game, I believe he got up to, pulling up his game log here, he got up to close to 60 pitches, and that was only after 2 days of rest. He pitched on July 7th, then he pitched on July 10th, getting the 60 pitches. Now we have a week off. Maybe we get closer to that 70-plus pitch range, to where at $7,100, I don't mind that versus the Royals offense. There's a couple good bats there, but if he can just suppress runs and pick up the win, if he's able to go 5 innings, he actually got close to 5 innings in his last outing. That's not a bad day at all. So I think he's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, to look at where he is projected and what we have, he is at the bottom of the list here. Yeah. So you could be double the field at 1% ownership for Castillo tonight.
Yeah, I mean, like we said earlier, it does not take much to gain leverage.
No, it doesn't kill your lineup, right?
No. I mean, if you're building 150 today and you have 8 Castillo lineups, who cares whether it does? I mean, if it does well, you're going to get massive leverage. That's all it takes.
Yeah, that's amazing still. Isn't that wild that he's at the bottom with zeros across the board, and because of that 0.5, that blip on the radar, he still has, and again, it's a negative 0.5% leverage point, but he's not like others that we normally see there at the bottom. So in this case, I know Keller and Arena is a little different, but that's workable by all means at that low number. Do you attack that, though, with Daniel Lynch? Well, let's look at Toronto and just kind of attacking Daniel Lynch, knowing that their run total high, one of the higher ones on the board that we have projected at 5.4.
Yeah. As far as, you mean like using Daniel Lynch today lineups?
No. I meant like the Jays gotcha. Stack. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I'm not sure I can make a case.
No. I figured we just kind of like chalked up Daniel Lynch as a guy that you're probably not getting too much, if at all.
That's correct. I cannot get to Daniel Lynch today. I would much rather take my chances with some other cheaper pitchers on the slate. Really, Daniel Lynch isn't even that cheap. I mean, $7,400. Castillo's cheaper. I'd much rather get to him. I'd rather get to a couple other guys we're going to talk about later on, and even a guy like Lodolo. So, yeah, Daniel Lynch, a guy I am not getting to. The Blue Jays are going to get a ton of ownership today, but I think it's for a good reason. Like, if you're looking at the top of the order, Springer, Guerrero, Kirk, Bichette, Teoscar Hernandez, even the bottom of the order is not that bad. Denny Jensen, to round it out, Chapman. So, while they're going to be popular, they're not going to be like Coors Field. So, well, I don't want to call it a tournament or leverage play by any means. It's still a spot that I'm going to try to attack a lot here.
Yep. And I think if it's sub-stack down to even one-offs, this is a really good opportunity, I would think, for Toronto to kind of mix and match and be one of your more favorable, not even stack like overall stacks, but just teams maybe that you're getting to. Does that make sense? Like in different capacities?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I'm looking at some of their leverage scores too. And typically, offenses in this kind of spot, I mean, obviously it's going to grade out well, but they're going to get a lot of negative leverage. We're talking only 3% negative leverage on the Blue Jays, and that's not going to concern me too much. And it's less than what the Pittsburgh Pirates have currently. So I feel pretty good about getting to a lot of Toronto with close to a 6 implied run total in Hitters Park.
Now there is looking at how low Castillo is and knowing that you're not gaining anything to the field, if you somehow roll with some Royal stacks and they light up Castillo, but maybe from a Royal stack standpoint, it's not like it's a 2-for-1, but is there any interest with the Royals, especially because as much as there might be some leverage with Castillo, if something does positively happen, there very well could be the opposite with him.
Yes, for sure. And they do get a park bump going to Toronto for sure. And it's just the lineup, man. Looking at their confirmed lineup right now, Nicky Lopez leading off. That's never fun. You have Vinny there batting 3, Bobby Witt, 2-3 looks fine. But then Olivares, Rhino Hearn, this is a really bad lineup. It looks like a lot of players you've probably never even heard of. I believe we have So 4 players out of 9 in this lineup are currently the bare minimum 2K on DraftKings, if that tells you anything.
Ooh,
So
yeah.
it is a bad lineup to get to. If you want to take a couple one-offs with guys like Benny or Witt, I'm okay with it. But stacking these guys, while there's value to be had, this is a very bad line. We're talking Nate Eytan, Nick Pratto, Mike Massey, Freddie Furman. I'm not even sure if he's real. So it's going to be
Made up guys. Somebody got into 2K.
Right, that's what it seems like. So it's a complete shot in the dark here at low ownership, but I'd rather get to Castillo personally and just kind of avoid Kansas City.
Yep, absolutely. By the way, Slate Breaker, the leverage point, actually very helpful. Use Verlander to get different lineups. What you'll see going to need to get to like 80% to generate with Stroganoff, 5% would be Stroman, pardon me, would be enough. So talking about what you were saying, reiterating, of course, but it's always nice to have the chat lockstep with what we're doing. So before we head to Coors Field and talk about the meat of this slate, by all means, we have to remind you what's happening here because we still have this deal here for you. And you may be tired of hearing about it, but trust me, all you need to do is just tell the person next to you or tell the person in the chat, just keep spreading the word. The more people that sign up, the less you'll hear about it long term. I promise you, right? So, oh man, Josh and Love, everybody's constantly, because we want you to take a part of this. And you can see from people in the chat how often people are winning and coming back and saying, wow, it's a good thing that I'm now part of the Stokastic Plus Platinum crew. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So you know the drill here. We're going to build this thing for you. MLB Live is the promo code. That's the name of the show. You're going to get 50% off your first week of Stokastic Plus Platinum. In a week's time, you can go through everything. So you can sit there and go through everything possible on the Stokastic Plus Platinum Pass and mirror what you're hearing from people like Chris on shows with the tools that Alex has set up for you. And it's the fully comprehensive way to win money. I don't know how to make it any clearer to people. MLB Strategy Show, all one caps there as well. MLB Live, right? Well, hold on a second. I need to know which code is it, though? The reason why I need to stop and ask this, Chris, is this is not under normal circumstances, because on the Slack internal channel, thanks to Josh Engelman has done such a fantastic job getting people to sign up that there is now this internal contest. And you know that there is nobody that is more willing to talk shit about the positive things they've done and the negative things other people have done than Josh on our channel, right? I mean, that's just who he is, and that's why we love him. So I need to make sure that we are attributing anybody who signs up, Chris, to the right code that you and I get credit for this. Is that fair?
I think that's totally fair.
Okay, so is it MLB Live or is it MLB Strategy Show, Tyler? I guess we'll know.
It's MLB Live, man. You're
all
on
right. There we go.
MLB Live before lock. You see what we did there?
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
clever.
But I had Strategy Show written down. I look, I just want to make sure MLB Live. You can even put it right back up, brother, if you don't mind, since I destroyed that in order to just take a second to make sure we were getting properly credited. But again, look, that's it. MLB Live. You get access to everything. Use that on the checkout. 50% off your first week. And I know that there are people waiting. I know that because we do this with the betting stuff. Oh, no. Don't worry. Stop waiting. Just take advantage of this. It's probably going to be gone in a week. All right. With all that said, let's go to Coors Field.
Let's do it.
All right. And we'll hit Prize Picks after that, Tyler. That's cool. All right. So let's go to Coors. There's a lot of action here. And we can start knowing that these two stacks. Actually, I know we talk pitchers a lot, but it's really your call here because these are the top two owned stacks that we have by a lot, as you can imagine. Actually, Pittsburgh jumped up since we started here. So Pittsburgh now is I have 23%, Colorado at 14.5%. And then we talked about Toronto there getting that 11%. But Colorado is just a little bit above Toronto and then Pittsburgh. And then you have on the flip side, of course, the pitching matchup. So what are you getting to more so than anything of the four options, right? Home pitcher, away pitcher, home stack, away stack. What jumps out at you the most?
Well, right now, currently, I have the most of the Pittsburgh bats, but it's just basically to fit in some more expensive things. I'm still coming in underweight to the field because I just don't feel good about being overweight on Pittsburgh chalk. I realize the spot's great. Urana's a terrible pitcher. If you're looking at some of their numbers, some of his numbers so far this year, we're talking 5.7 xFIP, a 9% K rate, and a 12.5% walk rate. Not allowing much power, I will give him that, but man, it's just we're talking about a 6-run total for the Colorado Rockies and a 5.5 here for the Pittsburgh Pirates. But I'm getting to most of the bats. I am not playing the pitchers, but that does not mean, just because I'm not playing the pitchers does not mean I have to be overweight on the stacks. At the same time, I can still play a good chunk of them, but I can still come in underweight to the field. Like when people say they're fading a team or something, it does not mean you have to full fade them. It just means come underweight to their ownership, because currently Pittsburgh's coming at 23%. Top stacks have them at 13% and 14%. I'm currently coming in around 15 to 16%. I feel pretty good about that, to still be underweight, but still getting decent exposure to them, because I can obviously see them having a great game. It's going to be 90 degrees in cores, which the ball is going to be popping, obviously. But outside of that, I will try to take an underweight approach on some of the chalk here while still getting to it a little bit.
Same approach with the Rockies and that 14.5% stack.
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit over on the Colorado Rockies, just because I trust their offense more. If we see their confirmed lineup, if we got anything that I'm not expecting. So Connor Joe, Chris Bryant, Charlie Blackmon, CJ Cron. Yeah, it's a lot better than naming off Kevin Newman, Ben Gamel, Ace Vogelback. Like, I can feel a lot better with those names in my lineups. And there's some cheap pitchers to make it work today. So we go ahead.
No, I love it. I love it.
Okay.
I was just saying, yeah, man. I was just agreeing with you. It was hilarious as you were laying that out. So underweight to Pittsburgh, overweight to Colorado. Are you using actually? Let me just rephrase this here on the game itself, because we're not going to really have much at all to talk about Urena or Keller, as you mentioned. So with Pittsburgh and Colorado, how often do you find yourself getting to substacks of 3 to 2-man to even one-offs, taking advantage of maybe opportunities to lessen the leverage, the negative leverage? Sorry.
Yeah. So currently in some of my 3-player stacks and 2-player stacks, it's pulling in a lot of the Pittsburgh one-offs, just because I think it's because I'm kind of jamming in a ton of Verlander. Like, I think of my Verlander exposure currently, we are sitting at just right around 70%, which it sounds like a lot, but it's only just not a couple percentages, but I think he's coming around 9% owned. So I'm going to try to bump that up a little bit more, but the more Verlander you're going to get, the more you're going to find yourself getting those one-off with the Pirates. And I'm fine with that, because a lot of people are going to be full stacking them. So if you're just getting to 1 or 2 guys and they happen to bust overall, it's not going to kill you completely. So it's kind of the approach I'm taking to fit in the stud Verlander, who's by far the best pitcher on the slate today.
Absolutely. It's a really good opportunities you mentioned from an offense standpoint. So by all means, heavy on the bats, nothing right with Keller or Urena to mop this one up before we move to DC.
Yeah, I was scrolling all the way down, and they did not make a lineup somewhere.
No, I don't think anybody's going to push back on that one. By all means, my friend.
Okay.
All right, so we go to DC. Let's though hit everybody up real quick about Prize Picks. This is amazing. Our promo code is there, Awesemo. It's above our heads. Use that upon your first deposit match, $100. This is, especially if you're in an area where you can't legally place a wager, you now can on Prize Picks. We have so much content. I already see coming out. We've got stuff on the Derby coming up on Monday. You have to give it to Prize Picks. I mean, they have truly mastered that balance of being able to provide you a ton to bet on and not being just reliant on the legal books. So if you're in a spot where you can get to Prize Picks, which is pretty much like everywhere but Pennsylvania, then go ahead and use our promo code Awesemo for a first match deposit, $100. And there's everything on Prize Picks, and there's constantly new content here. So, all right, let's move to DC here. And looks like Acuna right out. So we've got this Braves Nationals game, Fried and Espino. Maybe Fried, a good place to start here. Lower ERA for sure. I don't know if the K rate, though, is necessarily as high as you'd like.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I believe we were talking about Taijuan Walker. I wouldn't normally get to too much Max Fried in this spot. Washington's not a team that really poses a ton of strikeouts, and Max Fried, while he's a great pitcher in real life purposes, only a 23% K for a player that's nearly $10,500. It's a bit much, but when I was crunching lineups, I'm finding myself getting to a decent amount of Max Fried just because I have some cheap pitchers that I'm pairing with. And obviously Pittsburgh's populating some of my lineups, even though I'm not going to go too overboard on them. It's just leaving salary, and Max Fried's projections are good enough to where he's going to pop into lineups. But man, that's a lot of money for a player that doesn't pose a ton of strikeouts, but it's not too much power. Not really scared of anybody in that Washington lineup outside of Juan Soto. I mean, Josh Bell's, he's got some pop there, but outside of him, it's a really ugly looking lineup, but not a ton of strikeouts there. So I think he'll be fine from a run prevention standpoint. I think he's probably going to pick up the win. Obviously, no Acuna, and the Braves lineup kind of sucks overall, but they still have a high implied run total, and the offense is still loaded with Swanson, Olsen, Riley, Darno. So I think he should be able to pick up the win, go 5+ innings, and probably deliver a quality start.
But not enough to really get to in the sense of be like equal to the field even. Definitely not over, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm not getting, because I'm getting a little bit more max free than I wanted to in the one crunch I was doing. And I want Justin Verlander to get up there more. So I'm probably going to have to put some thumbs down in the fantasy cruncher to make that happen.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to get to what I have right now. I mean, he actually popped up in close to 35% of my lineups, but his ownership projection is currently sitting under 20%. And I do not want to take a double the field approach on max free today. I'd rather get all into Justin Verlander versus Oakland. So I'm going to try to dumb that down a little bit, and I feel better about it.
All right. One thing, and again, we always play a meteorologist here. We don't play expert by any means. The analysis is there, but looking at the weather is definitely something to keep in mind by all means. By the way, shout out to Ryan Nelson on the super chat, Matty, G, and Chris, the best Stokastic has to offer. I assume he's talking about you and not one of our executive producers, Chris Karen, right? This is Chris Pennell, not Karen. That's
either way, I'll take credit for it.
No. I think we are now attributing that credit to you as the Chris that Ryan's talking about, no matter what Chris he was talking about. That's you. No, it is you. We appreciate the super chat. Definitely not necessary, but yes, between Matty and Chris, two sharp minds for sure. And look, they are able to stretch out and hit you with multiple sports, which is always dangerous. So Stadia Wizzy, it just stopped rating here in DC for what it's worth. It does look like, though, Chris, at 5 o'clock, there's a 97% chance of precipitation. So this is kind of just an opportunity for those who are new to you and your approach in general to these slates, how you look at weather and how you do factor weather in.
So unless it's like looks like a complete washout, I'm usually willing to roll the dice a lot of the times because I'm not trying to project weather. Because a lot of times we think something's going to happen, well, then it doesn't. Then we have a nice missed opportunity, and you kind of end up kicking yourself. And I'm looking at just random weather website for precipitation. It's intensity. It says very light to moderate to light rain. So it's not even enough to kick them off the field. We'll see. Obviously, DC is always a little bit finicky with their weather, so it's definitely a trouble spot. But I don't think it's going to be enough to where I completely X out, Max Fried or Atlanta stacks.
Okay. So I think we're good, right? Did we hit the stacks? I thought we hit the Brave stack, right? Without Acuna?
Yeah, I mean, it dumbs it down a little bit, but it's still a pretty loaded lineup to where I'm not overly concerned about it. And I don't have any interest in the Nationals or Espino.
Right. I know you mentioned that. I was just making sure that I didn't move on, and you were just like, holy shit, we didn't even talk about the Braves.
No, we're good.
Yeah, we're good. Okay. That's what I remember. You talking about that and the difference with Acuna and all. All right, so let's go to Texas here. Logan Gilbert, Spencer Howard are two pitchers, and definitely some opportunity to get to these guys, matchup aside here. So let's just look at where you have Gilbert and Howard kind of in your builds pre-show, if at all.
Right now, Gilbert I'm getting to a lot because, like I said, I didn't want to get to that much max free. So Gilbert's coming in over 20% of my lineups currently. And I'm actually getting Verlander closer to 70% now. So I think we're trending in the right direction with that. I think Gilbert might end up coming down a little bit, but he is going to be, I'm assuming, in the top 3 as far as my personal exposures go for pitchers today. Just because, like we said, there's a lack of good options, and I don't really want to pick on Texas too much. It's still not a spot where I'd want to use Texas versus Logan Gilbert. Very solid pitcher, but similar to the other guys we have on the slate, kind of better for real life purposes. 23% K rate, 3.8 xFIP, and he's close to $10,000. And even Verlander today, his K rate's not in the 30s. So we're having to spend a premium for pitchers that really aren't boasting a ton of strikeouts so far this year. So kind of an ugly slate all around for pitching, but Gilbert's solid enough to where I don't really want to get to the Rangers. Obviously, Corey Seager's been hot, but I'm fine with getting to a good amount of Gilbert just because he's a fine pitcher and, like we said, lack of good options.
Yeah, and you mentioned 20%, so you're about, give or take, 2% above. He's already at -3 as far as a leverage point, but we talked about this from a standpoint of a stack. I think it was Toronto, where you're looking at the return and what you're expecting to get, and maybe that leverage should be closer to like 5 or 5-1. and the fact that Logan Gilbert is only at -3.3, you can kind of mitigate if it makes sense. And I don't. I'm more asking than saying. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you can almost, if you know that your true number, let's say, is like 4.8, and he's at 3.3, you can you can get to a little bit more ownership knowing that it's basically going to bring you back to what that true number could be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that like wildly off?
No, it definitely makes sense.
Okay.
And when you compare him to some of the other expensive pitchers, like, again, it's not a perfect world for building lineups today. Like Max Fried's dropping out, just very positive, 1% positive leverage there. But if you're looking at Verlander, who we're going to talk about soon,
yep,
massively negative leverage. So if you compare a 3% to a 25%, it makes Gilbert look a whole lot better in tournaments.
All right. So on the other side of this, I don't know how much you're working with Texas, knowing that you're getting to a lot of Seattle scumdackering it there from that standpoint, or if it's just a matter of working with either one of these stacks and kind of around their leverage.
Well, I actually don't mind Seattle as a stack today. They have been playing some pretty solid baseball, and while Spencer Howard isn't the worst pitcher out there, sub 4 xFIP, 20% K rate, he's allowing a lot of pop so far, around the 260 ISO, 43% hard contact rate, and 4 homers allowed per 9. So I don't think Seattle's the worst stack. Maybe not the highest implied run total today at 4.5, but obviously J right up top, just super expensive to get to. But you have some power and speed there. Jesse Winker versus a righty. Eugenio Suarez, Ty France, obviously a contact machine. I don't think it's a stack that's going to be extremely popular today. If I can pull them up on the top stacks tool, yeah, they're looking at around 2% ownership today. So it does not take much to get some leverage on Seattle. So I think they're a nice tournament spot.
All right, so we move. Oh well, I guess anything with Texas on the other side.
No, outside of
low projection.
Yeah, outside of Corey Seager, who's been really hot, maybe as a one-off, but outside of that, not a big fan of Texas.
All right, well, I know you're a big fan of Cleveland in real life, for better or worse here. They a decent, you can't hate it. They're hovering in that 4.7 run projection. This one made the no-run first inning video that I do for Odd Shopper today. Okay. It burned us last night because I thought that Detroit could just cross your fingers and hold Cleveland scoreless. Detroit doesn't score. They're the worst team in baseball scoring a first inning run on the road. So this is all about Cal Quantrill and whether or not, he can do it. But I think it's like 3 of 9 home starts, or maybe like 2 of 9 home starts where he's given up a first inning run. So he's got a pretty good stretch going. Nobody cares about that outside of making some money. So that's why I just bring it up real quick. But bottom line, 3 of his 9 starts. Sorry, I just want to make sure that I got that correct. So let's start there. I mean, again, you're always going to have an opportunity to counter the field with Detroit. You've got Pineda out there who, look, neither one of these guys have great numbers. Let's start there. I mean, we shouldn't dance around that, right?
No, they're both pretty bad.
Okay. And I don't imagine you're getting to either one. We've had guys with significantly better seasons here that you are like reluctantly getting to. So is it a safe assessment that you're staying as far away from Pineda and Quantrill?
Yeah, if you're just to look at their numbers swiftly, Pineda, low strikeout guy, 12.5%, barely walks anybody. So he's going to pitch the contact, and that's all Cleveland does. They don't strike out at all versus right-handed pitching, so they're going to put the ball in play. And if you're looking at Quantrill, you can start with the good here. He's got a great matchup versus Detroit. They're absolutely dreadful versus right-handed pitching so far this year. 24% K rate, 6.5% walk rate, 102 ISO, 69 WRC plus. I'm looking at my spreadsheet and they're just bright green for Quantrill, but then it's bright red when you look at his actual numbers. So it's kind of a battle there. What's going to win out? But Quantrill, I mean, kind of similar numbers to Pineda, where 7% walk rate, 14.5% K rate. Both these guys just are not very good. I like the Cleveland offense in this game, and while Quantrill's not very good, I just don't like Detroit at all.
Yeah, you're not even gaining really much leverage unless you were to just pinpoint this at like 3 or 3.4%, where it would be so precise. But again, as you've alluded to a couple of times in this matchup, it's just not worth the risk to maybe even do 3% of that. All right, Tampa Bay. Orioles, Rays, Dylan Bundy caught him a couple of times. We referenced him a little bit earlier as far as pricing is concerned. Ryan Yarbrough. Again, neither one of these guys are really doing a ton from a K standpoint that I would think, based on how you've already been approaching this slate, are going to be appealing to you.
Yeah, and I was looking at ownership projections, and I was really shocked that I saw Ryan Yarbrough as the second highest owned pitcher on the slate. I'm not, is that showing on your side as well, or is that just an error for me?
No, 1 second here. 1 second. Let me refresh. So I
Okay.
have up to the date. But last I checked, yes, he was definitely high up there. Now I have to go back. Give me 1 second here. But yeah, I believe that, I mean, Verlander's through the roof. Yep. 20% we have him.
Yeah, that's not chalk I want to be a part of.
No.
No.
And the leverage, look at how low his leverage score is.
Right. I believe it's second worst only behind Verlander. And that's only because Verlander's at massive ownership.
Yeah.
But man, I cannot do Yarbrough chalk today. There's another cheap pitcher in the next game we're going to talk about, or maybe I don't know what your order is, but at some point, I'd much rather get to him over Ryan Yarbrough. I mean, if you're looking at Yarbrough's numbers so far this year, close to a 6x FIP, a 12.7% K rate, a lot of fly balls, and Baltimore has been playing pretty well. I know we don't really think of them as a great team or anything, but they've been one of the hottest teams in baseball.
No, I think that's a really good point because it happens in, my limited newer experience in these worlds here where narrative every now and again infiltrates the Paul George syndrome of no matter what, this guy's going to suck in a playoff game and then he dominates a slate. You're right. I think there is still the general association that it's the shitty Baltimore Orioles, but you look at the numbers, the projections that we have, the positive leverage score, and if you removed Baltimore and Orioles and that logo, you would love this team today.
Right. I mean, Yarbrough, I think it's just because people kind of shy away from Tampa pitching because they're obviously in Tampa Bay, and people just think of the awful ballpark, which I totally get. And Vegas always completely kills the run total, so it never looks too appealing. But Yarbrough just sucks this year, to put it simple. I don't mind getting some of these Orioles, looking at some of their bats here. Mullins, Mancini, Mountcastle, Santander, Austin Hayes is a guy I love using versus left-handed pitching. It's been good versus them for a couple years now. So, yeah, I'd much rather be on the Baltimore side than playing Yarbrough at high ownership for sure.
Is there anything on the Rays side you want to mention on the way out on this game? I mean, there isn't much leverage here, but again, that low ownership, a lot of this is predicated on Pittsburgh, Colorado, and Toronto gaining the double-digit percentage and everybody else fighting for it.
Yeah, I'm not going to get to the Baltimore pitcher. I think $8,500. He's a bit overpriced for a guy with a sub 20% carry, not allowing much power at all. And obviously, it's a great park to be in to suppress power. Does get quite a bit of fly balls though, but only half a homer allowed per 9. But the Rays offense, I mean, maybe Brandon Lau with him being back, Ji-Man Choi. I don't mind them maybe as one-offs, but it's nothing to get too excited about with a low total in a bad ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, going up against Kramer, it's just nothing here. But these two pitchers, you're right. All right, Houston, Verlander, let's talk about it. This is the guy here.
Yeah.
This is it. If we were just bouncing around with no particular order, he would be the guy we would start the show with and probably go halfway through. So let's look at it. 60%, 58%, 57.9 to be exact. But, I mean, you could be 56% and be under the field here.
Right. It's one of those things where I realize he has a lot of negative leverage, but at the same time, there's just not many pitchers I want to get to. So sometimes I just kind of eat it. And pitchers are a lot more projectable than bats. So if we're going to have an offense that has massive negative leverage, I'm more comfortable starting to agree with that. But when we have Justin Verlander, the next best options are Max Fried versus kind of a low-K-ish Washington team with weather concerns, and then Taijuan Walker and Logan Gilbert, I'm willing to just say, you know what, I'm going to take my chances on the negative leverage and get to a lot of Justin Verlander. And that's currently what I am doing. I just did some new crunches up to 75% on Verlander, and I feel pretty good about that. I want to be above the field on Verlander today. I don't think the Oakland A's are going to pose too much of a threat here. I think last I saw their run total was 2.6, which is really low. I could see Verlander getting as close to 6 to 7 Ks here, pitching at home. The Astros should be able to pick him up a win, 25% K rate on the season. And looking at the A's so far this year versus righties, it's not pretty. 24% K rate, only a 71 WRC plus. So expensive, but I like it.
No, and exactly, and it's worth it here. And again, if you're looking at this game from a couple of different angles, it could still be up there. And go to OddsShopper if you want. That's always the best place to at least start. But the -3 run line here was close to 198, I think, 196 earlier in the day. And you're right. I mean, when you start to go back here, Houston -3 with Verlander on the hill, the A's, and we can talk about this from a DFS standpoint with Canning on the other side there, but I don't know how Oakland stays in this game to where if there's one inning that the Astros get. 1 4-run or 2 innings where you get 4. I just don't know how Oakland keeps up.
No, I totally agree. I'm just looking at the Oakland offense, and it's really bad.
Come on, terrible.
I know Verlander's old, but he's still chugging along this year. And obviously, I think it'd be a great day to be an Astro. Probably not a great day to be an Oakland day.
Oh, not by any means there. So nothing at all. Like, is there anything before we hit that final game in Miami? Is there anything, I hate to use the term sneaky, but is there anything at all that you can uncover with this Oakland team from a one-off, a 2-man stack? And I saw your face, so I'm guessing the answer is no. But yeah, I mean, maybe there is 1 or 2 things. And if not, then that's fine. We'll flatten them and just move on.
So there's 2 things maybe you could get
your
to
face,
Oakland
by
with.
the way, was perfect.
The body language is probably more the
I
trust
love
in
it.
my words coming out here.
I love it. Yes. And everybody saw that, which is beautiful.
The one thing I'll give you, if you're just trying to be weird and different on the slate, Seth Brown's got some pop versus righties batting cleanup for the A's. It's not a one-off I really want to be a part of, and I'm not really sure what the upside is going to be here because there's many other cheap guys that are cheaper than Seth Brown and much better spots today, probably in that lower ownership, but it's still decent low enough spots to where you don't really have to. But if you're fading Verlander, if you want to throw in a one-off of Seth Brown and maybe I think that's really about it that I can say.
Yep.
I'm not even going to try. So
nope,
Seth Brown's
fine.
it.
That's fine, man. I didn't, yeah, and I didn't mean to insinuate by any means that you had to go any deeper than maybe a name or like even a grunt. So that's all good. All right, let's hit our final game here, and it's locks about 7 minutes or so away. Let's just remind everybody about what's happening. Our 2 new channels and one, coming back, our fantasy football channel, our best ball YouTube channel as well. We want you subscribed across the board, and the puppy is back. The puppy 2 best ball is back on Underdog, and we're offering $1 weekly access to our best ball kit through Sunday. Well, that's today. So that's an $8.99 off deal, the weekly price. All right, $9 basically off the weekly price. It's down to $1. Best ball season long fantasy football rankings, everything that you need for Underdog daily draft rankings and beyond. Just use the code PUPPY. All right, PUPPY. That, you know what it was. We were all over it last year. We're all over it again this year. Promo code is PUPPY, and take advantage of all the content that we have on there. Savoca, Lepre. That's where Lofty is. I saw everybody asking, like, where's Lofty? He's over on the fantasy football channel now, getting you ready for the season. All right, my Phils, pretty big win. So, weathering, if you will, Alcantara and his double-digit Ks last night. A little bit of a different pitching matchup than Gibson Alcantara, I would think. All right, so look, I love the guy, but I think in this case, this isn't even like a real life versus DFS. I think Ranger Suarez is who his numbers kind of say he is.
Yeah, I know he was out for just a very short stint, so I'm not concerned about pitch count or anything, but it's not a bad matchup versus Miami. Obviously, last year, I believe it was the second half of last year, he was pitching very well. The strikeouts were up there. Hasn't been the case this season, sub 20%, walk rates close to the double digits, but he gets a lot of ground balls, doesn't allow much hard contact whatsoever, and we're in a pretty good park to pitch in over in Miami, so he's got that going for him. I believe he was up to 110 pitches in his last outing, so if he's pitching well, he should go long enough to be able to pick up the winner quality start, whatever site you're on. And if you're looking at Miami splits versus lefties this year, 28% K rate, 76 WRC plus. So I don't think Suarez is an awful play. I'd much rather play Ranger Suarez than I would Ryan Yarbrough at much higher ownership, if that tells you anything. So yeah, I'm right there with that. And then Max Meyer, he obviously doesn't have any statistics this season, but he's one of the top prospects for Miami. And obviously they're expecting good things here. And under a 4 implied run total for Philly against Max Meyer, I think is showing some respect out of Vegas here. I believe he had a 28 to 30% K rate in the minors so far this season, pitched 58 innings, had over 60 strikeouts. So at 5K, I would much rather take some flyers on Max Meyer than I would Ryan Yarbrough, that's for sure.
Yeah, I was a little surprised, and you're right. And this just backs up what the respect that they're giving to Meyer here. I mean, the Phillies, and I'm in PA, so depending on where people are, and they have their books open, again, odd shopper. But Phillies minus 104 to the Marlins minus 112. And I get it, let down. You have a huge win lineup aside here. And depending on, where things are as far as lineup is concerned. But that's even with the 7.5 total, That's a lot of respect. I'm not saying this isn't like Phillies homering me. I'm just saying like that's a lot of respect, echoing what you said for a guy who has yet to play this year.
Yeah, I mean, you can sit in mid-90s in his fastball. He's got an electric slider. I mean, if he has a good debut, I mean, it's worth it at 5K. You don't need much at 5K, even if he gives up some runs. If there's some strikeouts here and there, and he just goes like 4+ innings, 5+ innings, if we're lucky, 5K, you do not need much at all. And I'd say he's in a much better spot than Ron Yarbrough is, especially when you factor in ownership on the slate and everything.
You like some Ks though from Suarez in this, and knowing that it's more the specific matchup as opposed to just Suarez's numbers.
Yeah, I think he can.
I find 6 Ks in this game is what I'm asking you. At plus 200, at 2-1, can I get 6 Ks in this game, Chris? And I'm not going to hold you to it because this is my team, my squad. So if anything, I should know the answer to this. But hey, you're the analyst for a reason.
If it was 5.5, I'd be more tempted to go there. I currently have him at 5 to 5.5 in projections. So 6 is pushing it for me. But if there's a matchup for Suarez to get the strikeouts at 6, this is basically it because Miami does it a lot versus lefties.
Look, I can do this. I can build a mini ladder and I can put a unit. I can bet to win a unit minus 113 at 5Ks, and I can put a half unit at the 2-1.
I like that.
Okay. Sounds good, man. Sounds good. On the offense side here, knowing that you've got, well, as we just laid out with the pitching, just kind of compared to leverage on the final couple of minutes that we have, you're going to gain a little bit to the field with Philadelphia, a little bit more with Miami.
Yeah, Philly, like I like Max Marte. I was looking at my crunches here because I was finalizing them up. I believe I have Meyer at over 20% of my lineups. He's my 4th highest owned pitcher currently. So I'm not going to get a bunch of Philly stacks. I'm trying to pull up my 5-mans. They're popping up just in the single digits there. So obviously not trying to get to Meyer here. Miami in a similar boat because I think Meyer and Suarez are pretty solid plays today at their price point. So not getting to a lot of bats. Obviously, if you want to one off a guy like Kyle Schwarber, that's fine versus the righty. But outside of that, Philly is obviously not a bad offense, but I don't think the spot's great for him. But Miami's offense obviously is very good.
Absolutely, it is. No, you're right, man. Did you pick up anything from practice, or is it still going?
Well, I'd have to check everything out.
Okay. This is not something that like you could just glance over.
Right. I had taken all the data.
Okay. No. Absolutely. Andrew Martinez, who's your most exposed stack? Was it Toronto?
Let me pull it up here. So I actually have a tie for 2 up top. Toronto and Colorado I have at 17.5%.
Yep.
Then I got Pittsburgh sitting at 16%. So tie for Toronto or Colorado.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Out Coors Field as well. Not Pittsburgh, though, which is key here. Right. Everybody's getting to Pittsburgh by all means. El Cuatro Loco, Ranger, 4Ks. Phils to win plus 145. Look, they got overall Contra, but 3 guys in that lineup last night were hitting 300 plus against them this year. The Marlins are kryptonite for the Phillies, no matter how good the Phillies are, no matter how bad the Phillies are. So I'm not going to tempt fate. I'll just roll with Ranger here, El Cuatro, if that makes sense, man. I'm telling you, no matter what, it's like the Phillies could be on a 15-game win streak, and here come the Marlins who have lost 20 in a row, and they win 8-1.
It's weird how it works.
I've seen it, man. I've seen it. All right, brother. It's a pleasure. Really. At Chris Pennell 16 at Shander Show for me. Thanks to Tyler. This is awesome, man. Hopefully we can do it again.
Yeah, it's fun.
Okay. We'll let them know. I mean, you've got more influence than me here. So
that might be it.
Thanks to everybody hanging with us. Hit that thumbs up button. We're out of here.